This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We're live in Nairobi 94.4, Mombasa 87.9, Kisumu 102.5, Nakuru is 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, Malindi is 97.7. Our Nyeri frequency is 90.9, and those who are not able to get us, our team is actually on site. We are also live now on KTN Home for the next 2 hours, as well as streaming the show on Spice FM KE, on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter. CT, today's proverb.
If you are building a house and the nail breaks, do you stop building the house or do you change the nail?
Why is the proverb asking me a question? Just give me the answer.
That's the whole point of the proverb. Whether it is a statement or a question, it's supposed to elicit a reaction.
Does Hari have blessing?
Thank you.
Doesn't want to think.
Yes, I applaud you for doing what is required. You've responded. Good.
And your mind at some point is turning, and a proverb is house. Stop.
Wait until you hear the house proverb I have for tomorrow.
Oh wow. Okay. Coming soon, the trailer. Coming soon.
Okay. So let's talk about youth empowerment, okay? This is something we're talking about. Kazi Mtaani, what do the youth need to do? What do they need to see happening? Now, in recognition of all number of things that have been happening in the country, number one, a bigger population of this republic is actually the youth. Those below 35 comprise more than half, close to 2/3 of the population. Two, seeing the things that happened, especially after the post-election violence of 2008, and the conversation that started coming up of, okay, we need to empower the youth, engage them positively. Three, government decided to come up with a policy, a national youth policy. Four, government went ahead and enacted a law called the National Youth Council Act in 2009. And then it has structures of how the Youth Council should operate, blah, blah, blah. Came into operation in 2012. The current CEO of the National Youth Council is a gentleman called Roy Sasaka Telewa. Roy Telewa, CEO of National Youth Council. He joins us now on the line. Good morning, Roy.
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be in the Situation Room.
Now, the first thing is National Youth Council. There are many people who will hear National Youth Council and they'll be like, okay, it's one of those bunge mtaani things, those ad hoc organizations. So this one is actually a state organization.
Yes, well, actually, when you look at it, you've done a very good overview of who we are, and it is a realization of Section 55 of the Constitution. You see, our Constitution has provided that we should have a platform where young people can get room to associate, be represented, and be heard. And when you look at Section 55, it's one of the sections of the Constitution that provides an affirmative action for the young people. So the setup and enactment of National Youth Council is purely to actually realize that section of the Constitution. Amongst other agencies, I know there is also Anti-FGM Board. There are other agencies like Youth Enterprise Fund. There is a Wezo Fund. But the major one that talks about representation and inclusivity of young people is the National Youth Council.
Let me ask this question. I like what you're saying. I even like the idea that such an association, an organization, such a council exists. Now, would you be so kind as to tell us how exactly all these wonderful things that this particular organization was set up to achieve, how it has gone about the business of achieving them throughout the country?
Okay, first of all, just a clarification, it's not an association, it's a council. Like the Council for People Living with Disability and any other government agency. And that informs how it's structured, where we are starting. We are anchored in the Ministry of ICT and Innovation, which provides the overall oversight. And then, of course, we have the board, which is the council, and then the secretariat. Now, when you look at how we've been able to achieve our mandates, and our mandates majorly, I can mention, for the essence of sharing with my fellow young people, is on advocacy, research, and pushing for inclusivity and representation of the young people. How we've gone across to do this is from the council, we have the secretariat. The council is young people across the country. And those young people now represent the youth from the grassroots. And that's how, when you look at the composition of the council, is unique from any other state agency, where we start with the elections from the ward level up until the council. And then those young people now represent the respective areas that they're coming from. So when you look at how do we achieve this, is to make sure that when you're talking about decision-making table, do we have young people at that table? Do we have young people sitting on boards representing other young people? Do we have young people in task forces? Do we have young people harnessing and voicing the concerns of the very young people? So the model of for the National Youth Council is to make sure that at every decision table that is there, we have a voice of the young people. We've made headway in terms of representation, though we are still not so. The percentages are not so good in terms of representation, but we know that with the continued advocacy, we are going to have that heard by the young people.
When you look at how we've been able, please, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, when you look at how we've been able to actually champion our mandate, we roll out activities and programs by the young people across the country. I know we also have, we really leverage so much in terms of strategic partnerships to make sure that we co-create programs that are for young people, targeting young people across the country, and to cushion young people also in all areas.
Okay. Clearly, I misunderstood when I referred to it as an association. It's an arm of government. What I really want to know is, within the 47 counties we have in this country, if one wanted to be in touch with this particular arm of government, where would we find this particular arm of government? And how would we then know that the activities that you've mentioned very clearly are actually being manifested within the structure of the county governments?
Now, what we've done as the National Youth Council, we have the State Department for Youth, which is actually the State Department that we are domiciled in, and we are domiciled in the Ministry of ICT. So under the State Department, we have youth officers. We have youth officers across all the constituencies in the country. And we have also regional youth officers at the regional levels. So when you look at how do we harness and work together, so those are the people you are using. In the ideal scenario, we're expecting that because the term for the existing council members has just come to an end, and our CS, together with, of course, the PS, we are working into now coming up with the National Youth Council elections. So in the new elections, then we'll have delegates from ward level who will be the representative of young people. So as we speak right now, we are in the process of planning the election. The CS is actually at the last mile of publishing the election guidelines. And then soon, in fact, with your partnership of Spice FM, we are going to carry out a mega sensitization so that young people can come and take leadership position. So we expect that the young people from the grassroots are the voice of the youth as National Youth Council. But there is no void. As per now, we are using the youth officers at the constituency level.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, I'm at the point where if we are looking to say, okay, this is what the National Youth Council does, what are some tangible things that have then been presented in the lives of young people in Kenyans today that we can point and see this is as a result of the initiative by the National Youth Council, that we know this is actually happening because the National Youth Council had an initiative, they put it into place, and it's now in practice? What are some of those things we can see around the country before I go to my next question?
I think just to put us into perspective, we understand, like currently now, we are facing a pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, which when you look at the hardest hit segments is the young people. What have we been able to what has National Youth Council been able to achieve that we can say is tangible? What we did, first of all, is to marshal strategic partners in making sure that we, young people, get access to the protective gears in terms of masks, in terms of sanitizers, in terms of face masks. And we did this, and we continue doing this with our strategic partners, that is KPC, Chandaria. And as we speak right now, we are even expecting another merchandise from UK of 50,000 masks for the young people. And we are saying that young people need to continue working, but as they continue working their daily hustles, are they protected? Because some of these protective gears are costly. But if we engage strategic partners, we push on that cost for the young people. Now, we are talking about the effects, the draft effects that are coming from COVID-19, and one of it is the mental health issues that our young people are facing. Just the other day, when I was listening to you, you had even the security attached to our CS, Machangi, who just shot the wife and shot themselves. When you ask yourself, what are some of the triggers, you realize majorly it's mental issues that are affecting our young people. The other day, just yesterday, I was hit by another oncoming vehicle, which was a tipper, driven by a young person. It was a very bad accident. When I asked the young man, he told me, please, if you continue, the reason why I've been able to be hit is because I was drunk. But if this comes to the attention of my boss, I'm going to lose the job, and it's because of the issues I'm facing at home. And how can you help me? So these are major accidents. You are also hit. Your car is written off, and you're looking at the scenario. The gentleman is saying it's the mental issues he's going towards through. So what we did as National Youth Council, we've started a nationwide campaign of mental wellness campaign. And we rolled this we rolled it last year in July, but we've continued. The mega aspect was, I think, in February, where we had the whole nation together to rally around mental wellness awareness. And I'm happy that our leaders have taken up the initiative just to make sure that it's okay not to be okay, and it's also okay to look for somebody to speak to, because these are challenges we are all facing as a nation, as a globe. So this is one of the initiatives that we believe that with this continued awareness, our young people will have a cautious mind and will have a productive society in the country. Of course, amongst other initiatives that we are doing in terms of intergenerational dialogue, when you look at issues affecting young people, be it teenage pregnancies, anti-FGM, issues of cultural challenges that we are facing, most of these issues can be handled through intergenerational dialogue. And we've come up with programs as Sawazisha Gumzo, where we just provide an intergenerational mix where young people and the old generation can have a kikao and talk about issues that are facing them, and as well come up with the solutions to those issues.
How will such things be put into practice? I mean, I think it's interesting. You talked about, coming up with programs whereby intergenerational discourse can take place. What happens? Is this made up? Is this people where you have local meetings, town halls? How would those come out to be? How would you be able to operationalize this?
Okay, when you look at it initially, and that is the gap we're trying to meet. Initially, when I was growing up at a young age, we used to have our parents, our grandparents, and aunties talk to us. So when you look at the contemporary society, we realize that there is that gap because of, I think, the exigencies of work and the society we're living in. So we are providing a framework where the young person, the youth, can actually get that leverage, that opportunity to talk about issues that are affecting them, not at the national level, but at the grassroots level. And we are organizing, of course, town hall is also part of the platforms we are using, but also we are also engaging them at the grassroots level, where the youth from that particular community can come together. Of course, we rally them and we bring in together all the other actors. And in these forums, it's not just talking, it is talking for development. So we also bring in other agencies that we believe will have an impact to the young people. And this is in terms of economic, we bring in economic affirmative funds, that is Youth Fund, Wezo Fund, Women Enterprise Fund, and all other agencies. So that as we talk about the problems, we are coming up with solutions. And in those solutions, those are practical solutions that young people can just walk out. And from there, they pick up the decision that they have arrived in, and it can be able to change their life. And also when you look at some of these initiatives that we're bringing, is also like Greening Kenya. We realized when I was growing up in school, we used to push for, we used to hear campaigns about Momonyoko ya Udongo, how do we conserve our environment? So what we are doing also in those forums is to challenge young people to green our country by planting trees. And these are some of the initiatives which we believe will have a culture change and value change system as compared to just any other programs that don't actually address the issues of the young people.
So as you operate as the National Youth Council, and I'm glad you brought in all those other funds. You've got the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, you've got the Wezo funds and the Women funds, and then all these other programs that are being run in various arms of government for the youth, do you have representation in all these boards? So, for example, Youth Enterprise Development Fund, I would expect that at least the National Youth Council sits on the board. Does this happen?
Now, I think you've been able to understand the model of National Youth Council very well. In fact, you should be an ambassador of us. Now, that is what we are pushing. That is what we are advocating for. That in every board, we need to have a youth sitting there to represent us. Yes, there are a few boards that we have representation by the young people, including National Employment Authority, Youth Enterprise Fund, and some of the steering committees. So as we speak right now, we are coming up with an act because we realize that also when you negotiate without an act, it is very hard to implement. So we are coming up what we call the Youth Representation Bill. Because some of these acts, you may realize that they were made in isolation. You have the National NCIC Act made in isolation. We have the National GEC Act, which was made in isolation. Police Commission made in isolation. But we are coming up with one that will make it mandatory that in every board we must have a young people representing the youth. And I believe with a lot of advocacy, we will be able to achieve that because that is the model of representation and inclusivity by the young people.
I think you have a valid point. And given the numbers of the youth, yes, it should be. But let's take a case in point. 2/3 gender rule. It's in law. To date, we have been unable to implement it. 1. 2, when you talk about getting young people to represent other young people, I have to ask, what is this criteria that you're going to use? And is this criteria agreed upon by the very youth who feel that they will require this representation? I speak from the point of view that I support the idea of representation fully. And it should be. I support it. But those two questions, please respond.
Now, when you look at it, especially starting with the last question on representation, I just reiterated that our model of representation is a bit unique from any other government agency because it's actually the youth choosing their very own youth to represent them. And when you go through the process, starting from the ward level to the National Congress, you are having youth that have chosen their own youth through election model. So, and it's
I want to stop you right there, please. Tell me one place where this very thing that you're saying has actually happened so that we know this is this place and the other, they have done this.
Case studies.
Thank you very much. Just tell us, please.
In terms of countries.
Kenya.
Kenya.
The last council that the term came to an end was through the same model that I'm speaking of. And the reason why we've not been able to carry out the election is because the acts and those the regulation guidelines were in contravention to the Constitution 2010. So we will already have had the election. It's only that now we need to amend that, and that's what the CS is working on.
So what you're telling us essentially is aspirational, and I think it should be. But perhaps let me give a little leeway and ask, okay, in which country has this worked? Forget Kenya. Which country in the world do you know where it has worked?
Just a clarification.
Yes.
I was mentioning to you that the last council that we had as National Youth Council, whose term has come to an end, was through the same model. So it's not an inspiration, it's something that has been done in Kenya.
So if I were to ask a youth, let's say, let me choose a county. Let me just think, Murang'a County, all right?
Yes.
And I would ask some youth leaders or people who are recognized youth leaders, would they recognize that they had participated in choosing members who represent them in this council that you speak of?
Definitely. They will
would they have participated in activities, for example, like the one you were talking about, like intergenerational discourse? Would they have participated in such activities, Murang'a County, Baringo County, Kwale County? Would they have participated in such things and have a very, would they have awareness of what the council does in their county, for example?
Actually, when you look at the county coverage, we've done almost 37 counties already in the country. So Baringo, you're talking about Tana River, Mombasa, Kwale, we've already engaged and we're already rolling out the same. So they will have the same representation about what we've been doing, what we are doing on the ground. And just to top it up, we also, whatever we are doing on the ground, we also manifest it on our social media platforms, so that it's not only the youth of Murang'a or Kwale or Baringo who is actually been able to take advantage of the program. Like the Mental Wellness Week that we are running was being done in Kiambu County, but it was being broadcasted live across our social media platforms. So we stay on the ground, we may be able to reach 1,000 youth. But on social media, we target to reach like 50,000 and so. So that is what we do, and I believe that is the advocacy campaign that we're pushing. And in terms of, there's something also you asked in regards to
a country where this the aspirational model that you're speaking of has worked.
When you look at the National Youth Council model, it's actually an aspiration by the African Charter. It was ratified by the African Union, and it's a model that is to be replicated across all the African states. And when you look at it, Rwanda has a model in place in terms of the same, although in terms of their representation, I think half of the representation is done by the youth, half is done by the president. Uganda is also the same, but a good model will be Ghana. Ghana has a very elaborate model, and Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone just did the elections in November last year, and it was a very great success. So it's a model that was ratified by the African Union, and it's a model to push for inclusivity and representation of the young people to be ratified across all states. So different states have taken different models, and but the best ideal model is to make sure that the young people themselves partake or take part in choosing their leader.
That's very impressive. Now, you say that the elections will be held again soon for the new council to come in. Do you have the dates yet and the mechanics that's going to be used for the elections?
That is going to be announced by the CS in I think in due course, because our Cabinet Secretary John Sheru is finalizing on the guidelines, and he should gazette them very soon. He's very passionate actually to finalize this election, and we should.
Why should those guidelines be formulated by Cabinet Secretary or the PS at the end of a tenure of a council? Should not be in law and regulations in place. That is very clear. After X number of years, there will be new elections, and this is the modality of holding those elections. If we just want to leave it to the the whims of a cabinet secretary, there could be elections and some time where things are just elections are not uniform, basically.
Okay, when you look at it, we have the act that stipulates how the National Youth Council is governed, and in that act, there are some provisions that are the reserve of the cabinet secretary. Because when you look at the National Youth Council, we have the council and then we have the ministry. The ministry is in charge of all acts in terms of amending the act, in terms of regulations, and in terms of guidelines. That is the sole responsibility of the ministry, and that is how the country Kenya is structured. And that's why when it comes to the election guidelines, the process is by the young people, because when you look at the process of coming up with the guidelines, it is we started the process by the young people in terms of drafting, in terms of public participation. The young people are the ones who actually gave their views. And then now the document was presented to the cabinet secretary, who together with the office of the AG is to look at it and then finally process it and then guidelines. So that is law, and that is our Kenyan law. It is not an issue that we are selectively choosing that this one must be done by the cabinet secretary.
Okay.
And then when you look at it, you can't put everything in the act, because then the act will not be able to be realized. Because some things have to be left to be regulated in terms of regulation guidelines, and others have to be in terms of guidelines. And that explains why at this process, it is the preview of the ministry to take leadership in terms of that. Because if you are to leave it to me, then I can change the model to favor me.
I don't want to leave anything to you or the cabinet secretary. I want it to be clear in law and delegated legislation as well. Anyway,
and just for clarification, it's not for him as a person.
Right.
It's for him as an office, as an institution, and as a ministry.
Asante. Roy Telewa is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Youth Council. We've been talking about building resilience in youth, looking at the challenges and how the Youth Council operates. We hope to have more conversations with you as you gear towards having these elections. Like you said, creating awareness about the upcoming elections.
And I'm looking forward to greater synergy in terms of advocacy for the young people with you. And thank you so much for having me.
We're here for it.